welcome to the CIB Intelligence Report, the show that brings you the latest developments in the Chanticleer Intelligence Brief, the student-led applied analysis group that is supported by the Department of Politics at Coastal Carolina University. I'm Chrissy Katsikuti, proud CCU alumni with a bachelor's degree in political science. I have also received my master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from King's College in London, and just recently had the pleasure of becoming Community Relations Coordinator for the CIB. We are coming to you from the wonderful new studio facilities at the Edwards College of Humanities and Fine Arts, located on the Coastal's beautiful Conway campus in South Carolina. In our first show, we featured interviews with the CIB's founder, Ben Malone, and the CUP's faculty mentor, Dr. Joseph Fitsanakis. In this, our second show, we have with us two members of the organization's executive team, CIB Executive Director Blake Gutperlet and Group's Quality Assurance Officer Ryan Haig. Blake is a junior from Hickory, North Carolina, majoring in Intelligence and National Security Studies and minoring in Psychology. He focuses on interrogation techniques, military weapons capabilities, and counterinsurgency with an emphasis on Boko Haram, an armed militant group that is based in northeastern Nigeria. Ryan is a senior from Frederick, Maryland, majoring in Intelligence and National Security Studies with a minor in Geographic Information Systems. His interests include human intelligence, geospatial intelligence, and psychological operations. He's also the president of the National Security Club here at CCU and specializes in the politics of North Korea, arguably the most reclusive nation on earth. For over 10 years, the Islamist group Boko Haram has been fighting a war against the Nigerian state. The militant organization is based in a predominantly Muslim northeastern Nigeria, but is also active in the neighboring countries of Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. In its early years, Boko Haram modeled itself after Al-Qaeda, but in March 2015, the group announced its allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, commonly known as ISIS. In the latest phase of the war between Boko Haram and the Nigerian state, which started in 2009, over 20,000 people have been killed and an estimated 2.5 million have been displaced from their homes. And yet, the spreading war isn't discussed that often in the news media. Thankfully, we have with us CIB analyst Blake Gutperlet, who specializes on the current state of Boko Haram. Would you mind just briefly filming us in on history?
Gladly. So Boko Haram was founded in 2002 by Muhammad Yusuf in the Borno state in northeastern Nigeria. Now, the group was originally founded to protest the corruption in the Nigerian government. But in 2009, Boko Haram actually took up arms against the Nigerian government and conducted its first attacks in the capital of the Borno state in Maiduguri. Now, during these attacks, the founder of Boko Haram, Muhammad Yusuf, was captured and executed by the Nigerian government and its officials. This helped Boko Haram gain support, and they started stockpiling more weapons and resources. And from 2009 until 2015, they gained and controlled a large portion of territory in northeastern Nigeria. But in early 2015, the Nigerian government and neighboring countries began a military campaign against Boko Haram. And since then, Boko Haram has lost the majority of that territory and now currently resides in the Sambisa forest, which is, again, in northeastern Nigeria.
Okay, very interesting. Why do you think there's such limited information about Boko Haram and the Nigerian government itself?
So in Nigeria, the media is very much controlled by the Nigerian government. There have been reports of Nigerian officials approaching journalists and threatening them on reporting on negative things about the Nigerian government. And we believe that this is due to the fact that senior officials in the Nigerian government at one time, in some way or another, actually helped in the rise of Boko Haram. And so it's important to remember here that from 2002 until 2009, the Nigerian government did not take Boko Haram seriously as a group. And so a lot of the weapons and resources that Boko Haram was stockpiling were actually captured and taken away from the government. And so these officials do not want these allegations being brought against them.
I've seen that, they have recently, Boko Haram have recently officially declared their allegiance to ISIS.
Correct.
How do you think that plays together with the city of Mosul and Aleppo?
So I actually believe that these developments will help Boko Haram and make them stronger. And I say that because since the beginning, when Boko Haram affiliated itself with Al-Qaeda. They have had the problem with staying in constant contact with the senior leadership of these international terrorist organizations. And so with the current developments coming out of Mosul in Iraq, with the Islamic State fighting basically for its own survival, we're now seeing that Boko Haram is starting to realign itself with terrorist organizations in Africa. Probably the most notable would be Al-Shabaab in Somalia at this point.
When I think of Boko Haram, the first thing that comes to my mind is the kidnapped schoolgirls, the 276 schoolgirls that were kidnapped back in 2014. Are there any new developments that we should know about concerning that case? Or
Yes, there's actually a major development this year in September. So on September 24th, a video was released by Boko Haram in which its spiritual leader, Abu Bakr Shekau, said that they were willing to negotiate for the release of some of these schoolgirls for captured Boko Haram commanders. And many of us believe that these negotiations would not take place because they have failed on multiple occasions in the past. But to almost everyone's surprise, they actually did take place and they succeeded. And so in late September, there was actually a prisoner swap. Boko Haram released 21 of the kidnapped schoolgirls for 2 captured Boko Haram commanders and a ransom. Now, what's even more interesting about this development is that since that prisoner swap, Boko Haram has released another statement in which it is stated they are willing to negotiate the release of 83 more of the schoolgirls for more captured commanders and more of a money ransom.
do you think they will hold to it, or?
I'm skeptical. I'm not 100%.
Why do you think that?
With the way that the negotiations have broke down in the past, it was things that neither party could control. Negotiators being killed in action, and even on one occasion, Boko Haram just cut all communication with the Nigerian government. So I do believe, though, that since these recent negotiations have been successful, Abu Bakr Shekau does realize that these captured Boko Haram commanders are more valuable than the kidnapped schoolgirls at this point with the conflict. And so I'll have to say it'll be very interesting if the 83 girls are released to see exactly what Boko Haram will get in return.
How do you think the captured girls who have been released now, how do you think their life is different now from what it was when they were in captivity?
So from the reports that have been coming out about these girls, their lives will never be the same. A lot of them didn't actually want to leave. A lot of them had been married off to various members. Right. A lot of them had been sent to multiple camps, even the bordering countries, Niger, Chad, Cameroon. And another development from it is that in the culture in Nigeria, the families were actually not pleased and to bring them back into the family. Right. Because of what had happened, even though it was not necessarily their fault. It's just how the culture is there.
Do you believe there might be a slight chance of the release of the girls being an initiative for Boko Haram because they train them in secret, so once they get released, they are sort of recruited?
Correct. There's always that possibility. What we've seen is that a lot of the suicide bombers that Boko Haram is using, they actually do not use their own fighters. They actually use a lot of the women and children that they have captured. So there is a possibility that one of these girls who are loyal to the cause could possibly try to infiltrate the Nigerian government.
So you believe there might be a capture-release thing with Boko Haram
It is possible, yes.
And who do you think right now is winning the war against? Do you think it's the Nigerian government, or do you believe it's more Boko Haram?
So if you were to ask me this question 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that I believed that the Nigerian government was currently winning the conflict. And if you look at a map of Nigeria, the Nigerian government controls the majority of the territory in northeastern Nigeria. But with an insurgency, the territory you control isn't as important as winning the hearts and minds of the people who are involved in the conflict. And in that aspect of it, I believe that Boko Haram is winning the hearts and minds of the people in that country. And so with a lot of the new developments coming out of Nigeria recently, the past couple weeks, I would have to say that I believe currently Boko Haram is winning the conflict.
So if you would have to convince someone who has absolutely no idea about the Nigerian government and Boko Haram, if you would have to convince that audience or that person of which side is winning, you would tell them you believe, because it is known that the Nigerian government has been for decades, part of corruption.
Correct.
And I'm not quite sure about what you would say about their economic state right now, but so if you would have to convince someone, you would probably tell them do you think they will be convinced if you tell them Boko Haram is winning over the Nigerian government, or?
It would be difficult to convince someone 100% because with these types of conflicts with insurgency and counterinsurgency, and it's even more complicated in Nigeria with the corruption in the government, the economy, the oil economy in the country. It's these conflicts update every week. There's new recent developments coming out, and so right now we're seeing this kind of tug and war conflict between the two. And again, too, with how controlled the media is, it's also very difficult to judge thousands of miles away exactly how the conflict is going. But as of right now, and I feel like this will hold until the end of the year, Boko Haram, with especially a recent development coming out about the Nigerian government sexually abusing victims of Boko Haram, that has played a major role in winning the hearts and minds of the people in northern Nigeria. And I think now they realize that being under the rule of Boko Haram isn't as bad as the corrupt government in Nigeria being under their rule.
The regime of Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un of North Korea is known as one of the most reclusive on earth. Kim is the grandson of Kim Il-sung, who founded the communist country in 1948 after the end of the World War II, and defeated the Japanese imperial forces by the Allies. In many ways, the bitterly fought Korean Civil War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953, shaped the early stages of the Cold War and drew in the United States and China, among other powers. Today, North Korea has no official relations with the United States, and its relations with South Korea are tense at best. Although little is known about the communist country, there's no doubt that the North Korean economy is under pressure and the money is scarce in Pyongyang. And yet the country maintains an active nuclear weapons program, which is a topic of great contention with regional and global implications. To explain the latest developments in North Korea, we have with us the CIB's North Korea analyst, Ryan Haig. Ryan, why does North Korea continue to develop its nuclear weapons?
Well, quite frankly, it's a matter of state survival. They see particularly the U.S. as a direct threat to the regime of Kim Jong-un, and they will do anything necessary to protect Kim Jong-un's power. Now, this goes back to the 1994 agreed framework between the U.S. and North Korea. That framework was designed to limit North Korea's nuclear stockpile. However, disagreements mounted and distrust mounted, and by 2003, the framework fell apart, and North Korea decided to informally pursue nuclear weapons.
So we all know basically that the United Nations have enforced sanctions on North Korea, particularly because of their nuclear program, by funding, limit the funding. How do you think that has impacted the economy of North Korea?
It's only impacted North Korea in the short term. For example, recent sanctions in March have tried to limit the coal exports of North Korea, which is our top export. They have tried to squeeze financially the main income of North Korea in that regard. It worked at first, after the few months of sanctions being implemented. However, just recently, and just last month, it has been found that China and North Korea have resumed normal trading of coal prior to pre-sanction levels. So sanctions are not being implemented in a way that the U.S. and UN have designed them to be implemented. I will add to that North Korea has developed sort of a hybrid of a centrally planned economy and a market economy. So while the sanctions target their official income, the market economy is one that is developing in North Korea that is partially funded by the black market and materials from the black market.
What would you say about the relationship between China and North Korea at the moment? Having said that, because there is a race for global economic growth at the moment, and how does the United States fall into that?
So China and North Korea, China has, well, I'll back up. China has supported UN sanctions against North Korea in March. However, they have not implemented to the fullest degree, which tells me that it's more symbolic in nature. They are upset about North Korea, but they will not do anything to cripple or potentially collapse the regime. And the U.S. has taken, I think, a stance of trying to figure out which way China is going to go. Are they going to enforce sanctions to the fullest extent, or are they going to ease up and not allow North Korea to collapse?
There's also been a lot of, you hear a lot about the North Korean citizens defecting from the country. You have a lot of just the ordinary citizen and high-ranking members of the North Korean government. How do you think that impacts, the defections impacts the government itself?
Well, the main reaction I would say is fear. And I say that because Kim Jong-un over the last 5 years has increased border control mechanisms to prevent people from defecting. I will also say that there are two questions that the regime considers when somebody defects. The first one is, who else is involved? Who else helped them? And the second question is, what are they going to do to bring materials to the families still inside North Korea? That could be money, that could be material things that are illegal. It depends on the situation, and it's very high contextual of who defects. I will also add that defections, just because a high-level official defects, does not automatically mean the regime is crumbling or is unstable. Everybody still has their own reasons for defecting, and it should be contextual on how you analyze why a certain high-level official or citizen defected.
So would you say that there is a sort of domestic discontent of the citizens in North Korea? Because all the time, we get this, we get portrayed this image of how everything is so perfect in North Korea. Do you think it's a secret message to the West, or how do you?
Well, actually, going back to the defections, to answer that question, there have been a total of probably over 1,000 defections this year from North Korea just to South Korea. It doesn't include any other country. So there is always sort of some discontent towards Kim Jong-un, the way he runs and the methods he uses. What you have to consider is that, does that equal action against the regime? Will that cause people to act out against Kim Jong-un? And typically the answer is no, which is why we have such high defection rates. So there is always some sort of discontent, but it doesn't amount to anything threatening to the regime.
Right. So you believe that whatever the government portrays to the West and the media is just, do you believe it's a defense mechanism that the North Korean government uses to hide the discontent of
North Korea very much controls its media. It usually uses very verbose language, typically towards either South Korean President Park Geun-hye or recently U.S. President Barack Obama. It very much tries to hide what really goes on. That's why it's so difficult to see exactly how much discontent is available in the country.
It's interesting to see, since we're both discussing today about Nigeria and we have North Korea, and what I also meant, what I would like to, and I'm pretty sure the audiences would like to know too, is if we were to visit, North Korea is pretty hard, I'm assuming, to visit at the moment.
You can go there. There's tourism there. You can.
Oh, so it's that they have, but you were talking about, isn't there a limitation of how people,
very,
like someone like you and I, could enter North Korea for tours?
They do offer tours. However, you are watched every single step of the way. You do exactly what they tell you to do, and you don't do anything else. Otherwise,
so technically, if you were to visit North Korea, what do you think they would, the tours portray? What do you think they would show you?
They would mainly probably show the city centers. They will not venture out into maybe the outskirts of the cities or the rural areas. They will show you where the most developed areas are, which is typically Pyongyang, the capital, and other industrial centers.
Okay. Do you think it would be safe to visit Nigeria?
Yeah, actually, southern Nigeria is
Southern
one of
Nigeria.
the safest places in Africa to visit. It's predominantly Christian. A lot of U.S. companies are based there.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a map on the United States State Department of where exactly you can visit. They tell you, pockets of area that are controlled by Boko Haram to steer clear of. But yes, the southern part, it's actually a very interesting place to visit. There's a university there that I looked into possibly studying at over the summer.
Oh, okay.
And very beautiful campus. And I'd have to say, if you've never been through I've never been through Los Angeles traffic, but in the major city of Lagos and southern Nigeria, it looks about to be the same type of traffic, just bumper to bumper.
Right.
Nothing's moving. So if you're okay with sitting through a lot of traffic, then yeah, I'd say it'd be very interesting.
Okay.
Very.
Ryan, do you believe that the North Korean government is more stable now? Do you believe it's getting weaker?
You hear a lot.
Not only through the sanctions that they have been forced to, but
You hear a lot about pressure being increased on North Korea because of its nuclear program and other diplomatic issues. And quite honestly, the regime, I believe, is doing just fine. They are stable. Now, obviously, there is discontent towards the regime. There are defections that happen. But relatively speaking, Kim Jong-un asserts a firm power base. And with that, he creates stability. So as of right now, and it could change, but as of right now, the regime seems pretty stable.
do you think he could be potentially comparable, the whole dynasty basically, to China's late Mao Zedong?
They use philosophies, Confucianism in their Jewish philosophy. I would not compare it that much. North Korea always has their own twist of self-reliance, and they always make sure they have their own viewpoint they want the world to see.
Are you personally worried about their nuclear weapons program, or?
To be honest with you, at this point, they are not going to stop. So right now, the talk has to be how well can you deter it and not how well you can stop it. They've conducted 5 nuclear tests. They are going to conduct another one, I'm pretty confident, soon. So they're going to continue with that.
So we have discussed some really interesting topics today. I fairly enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure the audience have too. What do you two believe? What are your goals, and what are you trying to take out of this now in the future? What do you believe the audience it's important for them to know, discussing the topics that we discussed today?
So I would have to say, for anyone interested in joining the CIB here at Coastal Carolina University, I would have to say don't necessarily worry about the amount of information you think you have to know to do well in the club or the class or the intelligence and national security major here, or to be considered an expert on a particular subject. I would say it's all about applying yourself to whatever it is. I mean, Ryan and I, we've been a part of the CIB for a while, and we both know that it looks just as good if you focus on one subject for 4 semesters in a row, or you decide to switch subjects for every single semester you're a part of it. It's all about whether you can apply yourself fully to the subject and the topic.
And kind of add on to that, you'll find that students in the CIB have similar backgrounds in that they're unsure of whether they can commit themselves, they're unsure whether they can do it, and quite frankly, you develop a bond between you other CIB members because you go through similar experiences. And I think that's one of the best takeaways you can have, is that you have that support base behind you. So even though that you think you can't do it, you always have that person that's probably feeling the same way that just won't admit it themselves.
And I believe by joining the CIB, it's not just that you can't do it, but it's also big interest that will come out saying, oh, I want to know more about this subject. I want to know more about Nigeria, North Korea, Iraq, whatever else, the topics that that we'll be discussing. So I think it's always important to tell them, don't be intimidated. And
Right.
The toughest part is the first few months.
Yeah.
That's when you learn the basics. After that, you will gain more confidence in
Yeah.
what you're doing.
And you've got a great group of people around you, always willing to help. You know, even
That's important.
3, 4
Support
o'clock in the
group
morning.
and- yeah.
If you need help on a brief, we'll be there to help you.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much. And I want to thank our two guests, CIB Executive Director Blake Goodberlet and Group's Quality Assurance Officer Ryan Hay, for giving us informative update of the most recent security developments in Nigeria and North Korea, respectively. For more about the CIB, please visit www.cibrief.org. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Chanticleer Intelligence Brief, and on Twitter @the CIB. This is Chrissy Katsukuti with the CIB Intelligence Report. Thanks for watching. See you next time.